Welcome everyone to today's Avid Tech Talk webcast series. These sessions were created for Avid customers and partners who administer, design, use, and implement Avid products. And these sessions were created to help you be more successful with the deployment and use of Avid products. In today's session, we're going to focus on the Media Composer product, and we're going to be providing you with instructions on how to set up a floating license server. Today's session is a live webcast presentation, and this session is not designed with polished marketing content. Instead, these sessions are less formal and really focus on providing customers and participants with technical content and as much demo material as possible. I am Kelly Hooks. I'm a Senior Director with Avid Global Services, and I'll be the host of today's session. Today's technical content will be presented by Aidas Kapčinskas. Aidas has been with Avid for 3.5 years, and he's a Level 2 support engineer for licensing and customer operation issues, and is currently our Media Composer product champion. Prior to joining Avid, Aidas worked as an audio engineer at Soup to Nuts, which is an animation production company in Massachusetts. His credits include working on the series Word Girl for PBS, Home Movies for Cartoon Network, O'Grady for Noggin Network, Time Warp Trio for Discovery Kids, and Hey Moni for BET. So I'll now turn the time over to Aidas to go over our technical content.
Thank you, Kelly. We've got a lot of things to cover, so let's begin. Today we're going to cover what is a Media Composer floating license server. We're going to go over the out-of-box experience. We're going to set up a server. We're going to activate a client, and then we're going to go over a disaster recovery scenario. So what is a floating license server? Floating license server is a pool of licenses that's located on a single server that can be accessed by multiple clients over a network. So when a client activates a software, it takes a license from the pool. When the client application is closed, the license goes back to the pool. What are the benefits of floating license server? One benefit of floating license server is there's only one system ID to manage. So when it comes time to booking a contract or deploying an upgrade, you've only got one system ID to worry about instead of individual system IDs for each client out there. You're also able to maximize your license investment. No matter how many clients you have installed at your facility, if you know you're never going to be using more than 20 at a time, all you need to purchase is one 20-seat pack, and you're okay. You can also deploy an image that includes your license information to all your clients. This saves considerable time and effort because you can save the server information, bake that into your image, and when you deploy that image, all your client has to do is launch the software, and it knows where the server is and activates. There's also a theft prevention aspect to floating license server. Floating license server is a time-based activation, so there's really no way to steal a license. Worst case scenario, if a client activates their software and then disconnects from the network, the next time they close down the software, they'll no longer be able to launch. The license automatically goes back to the pool after a period of time. Currently we offer 20-seat packs and 50-seat packs for Media Composer, Symphony option, Newscutter option, and our Production pack. Production pack includes third-party software like Sorensen Squeeze, Isotope Insight, and New Blue Titler Pro. Alright, out-of-box experience. So we sell the floating license server via activation card. So you can see in the picture in the slide, it's about the size and shape of a credit card. On one side, you've got the Media Composer activation card printout here. On the other side, you've got a download or activation code, and then a system ID if applicable. The key to remember here is you're going to get at least 2 activation cards when you purchase a floating license server. One is going to have just the system ID on it, and then the other one's going to be for each additional seat pack that you purchase. You can load multiple seat packs onto one system ID. So there's a redemption process that we'll go over in just a second. That'll get you your downloads. And before we get into it, system requirements on the server side. Server needs to be running at least Windows Server 2008, Windows 7, either 32 or 64-bit, Windows Server or Windows Server 2003 R2. On the client end of things, Media Composer or any of those options need to run on basically just a qualified system. So you can go to the Media Composer version matrix on our knowledge base, figure out what OS you should be on with what version of software. So let me go through a little bit of demonstration here for you. That link on the activation card is avid.com/activation card. So if you go there, you'll end up at this page. You basically click Media Composer as your product, click Download Now. It's going to have you log into an avid.com master account. If you don't have a master account already, you can go ahead and create one here. There's no prerequisites. You don't need to own anything specific to sign up for a master account. You just need an email. So I've made a account already. I will log in as. So you'll basically take the codes that are printed on your activation card and you'll input them here. I've got a couple there already. And then you click Download Now. I've already done this just for timing purposes. To save time, I've already gone through the process and redeemed these cards in my account. So let me just take you to where you would end up. You would be brought to the My Products and Subscriptions section of your account. So your first card that you'd probably redeem would be the one that deposits just your system ID. Again, you get one system ID and you activate multiple seat packs onto that single system ID. You'll see here there's installation and README documentation link. There's also product details and downloads link here. So you've got your FlexNet device manager. That's your server software. This is your installer here. And then you also would redeem your seat pack activation card. And that will deposit a Media Composer activation ID. And then you've got all your installers here. There's Application Manager, Media Composer. This will be the most recent one. So if we, we come out with Media Composer 8.3, this 8.2 will be replaced here. We always keep your Avid.com account installers current. Any third-party installers are located here as well. So, let me just make sure I covered everything. Okay, so installation and README documentation. This is where you'll find your FlexNet Device Manager for Avid Administration Guide. So this is your go-to for how to get everything all set up. So, basically tells you to install the server software. First, there's actually a couple ports that you need to have opened up, 3333 and 8888. Those need to be opened up on your Windows firewall in order for the server to communicate properly. Other than that, you would just go to your account. You'd get your your installer here. I've already done that. Let me go to my server software. So it's a very lightweight server application. Takes just a couple minutes to install. I think like the installer is about 100 megabytes, so not too big, very lightweight. And it installs FlexNet Device Manager as seen here on the screen now. So this will list any devices that happen to be activated. There's reservations that you can add to clients. I'll go over this a little bit later. The feature usage, this is what's uploaded on the server itself. Offline server updates, this is where you would upload the actual license files. Properties and status, this is where you can set up your failover. This is where you get your server host ID. This is, in essence, your MAC address. So this is a very important piece of information information here, and then there's server logs. So once you have the FlexNet Device Manager software installed, you can go ahead and upload licenses to it. One thing that I'm going to demonstrate here as well is on with Media Composer 8.2, which just released on Monday, we now support a redundant floating license server. So if your main server goes down, your backup server will take over for it. Same server specs apply. Windows Server 2008, 2003 R2, or Windows 7 32-bit or 64-bit. All work perfectly fine. There's no additional cost for the redundant license. It's basically just syncing the two servers to look at the same exact licenses. So I basically have two servers set up currently, installed and set up. So one of them is running on the machine that I'm presenting on here, FlexNet Device Manager. It's on the local host here if you look in the URL here. This other window, I've actually tunneled into the other one. That's actually on a different machine. So these are two servers installed with the same software, just nothing on either of them at the moment. Let me actually, before I go too far, so just wanted to get back to the PowerPoint just to cover what we're kind of going over now. So we've installed our FlexNet Device Manager, gone over the ports, we've gone through some of the items within the FlexNet Device Manager. We're about to go through, configure the backup server, and we're going to upload some license files, go over a couple things there, and then talk about time sync and how the licenses react. Alright, so I've got my server software installed. According to my admin guide, the next thing is going to be to configure the redundancy of the servers. So what I'm going to do is go to my Properties and Status tab. Actually, I'm going to go to the main server first. This is my main server. Go to the Properties and Status. Sync to FNE properties. This is all covered in the admin guide. Sync to FNE enabled. This defaults to no. So you'll click this to yes. Sync to FNE interval. This number, you're going to have to change it to 300. It just shortens the default is some ridiculously large number, but we want the main server to sync to the backup on a much more regular basis. So this is set to 300, and then this is where you designate who's going to be the main server, who's going to be the backup server. So sync to FNE backup server. Here you put in the backup server. It gives you the kind of gives you the format of how you need to enter it. This is all covered in the admin doc. And then failover properties, main server. Obviously main server here, backup server, you put your backup server in there. Again, tells you the format here as well as in the admin guide. So once you set that up, you need to restart your services. So there's actually two services to restart. Let me go back to admin guide. So one of them's called the Apache Tomcat FlexNet Device Manager service, and then the other one's called Avid FlexNet Device Manager. While we're on these services, one thing to note is if you had a FlexNet Device Manager server software already installed from a previous version, like let's say you were on our previous product VLS volume license server, you might already have FlexNet Device Manager installed, but if it's an older version, one of the this Avid FlexNet Device Manager service names has changed with this new version. It used to be just FlexNet Device Manager. Now it's Avid FlexNet Device Manager. I've found that if you don't uninstall the previous one, you can run into some conflicts, and I think it's due to the fact of the service renaming itself. So if you're running older FlexNet Device Manager, uninstall it before you upgrade to this latest one. And if you don't know what version you're on, back on the server itself, in the About tab, 512. This is the most recent one. This is the one you get from your Avid.com account. All right. So once you set up your failover and you actually, let me just go through the backup server. Backup server, again, this is all covered in the admin doc. Sync to FNE properties. You actually want this on no, which is default, and then you just designate main server and backup server down here. And then there's actually a status tab here. Let me go to the status on both. So this is, I'm on my main server here, failover role main. On the backup one, this is the backup. I know it's confusing because it's me flipping through the same thing installed on two different windows, two different servers. But on the backup one, failover role is still main. It's actually going to remain as main until we upload some licenses to the server. So let's go ahead and do that. So according to the admin doc, next thing you're going to have to do is go to avid.com/license. And this is where you're going to enter the information from your avid.com account. As soon as I enter this code, it automatically notices that that's a code for a floating license server. So server host ID field pops up, backup host ID field pops up, and then system ID field was already there, and then email address, of course. So server host ID, this is your MAC address. So you would go to your primary server, you go to properties and status over here on the left, and then server host ID right here. This one that starts with AC. On the backup one, same thing, properties and status, server host ID, this one starts 589. So back on avid.com/license, I would put primary server host ID here, backup host ID here, system ID, email, and submit. I've already done this. For demonstration purposes, we'll skip it just because it takes a few moments to download the file and whatnot. This is also where you would go to activate optional features like Dolby AC3. So again, you put your system ID in here. It'll pop up with the actually it's already there. So it already gives you server host ID field and backup host ID field, and then email address. And then once you fill that out, it'll tell you what options are available. Dolby AC3 is really the only option available. So it's just a checkbox that you mark and you click submit. One thing about uploading, or one thing about downloading Dolby activations on floating license server, because you're able to upload multiple seat packs to a single system ID, there's a process that you need to follow to make sure you end up with the proper amount of Dolby. So let's say you have 320 packs of Media Composer. So you have 60 seats total. So at the end of the day, you want 60 seats of Dolby as well. There's a pattern that you have to follow. There's a KB article that goes over this, but you basically need to get the bin file for your Media Composer software, and then get its corresponding Dolby here. And then you go back here and get your second Media Composer license, go back here, get that corresponding Dolby. So it's kind of an alternating pattern that you need to follow to ensure you get all the proper Dolbys. If you mess up, it's okay, but you would have to call support because we'd have to deactivate a couple things in the background just to go back through and reactivate, just to make sure you end up with a proper seat count. All right, so I have, and one other thing to mention. If you're on this avid.com/license page and you enter your primary server host ID, your backup server host ID, and you get an error, exception thrown error, I believe it is off the top of my head, there's one prerequisite for your server host IDs if you're setting them up for redundancy. And one of those is you can't use the same server host ID that you had running in standalone mode previously in a redundant setup. So if you already had a standalone VLS running, FLS, floating license server running, and you want to add a redundant server, you're going to get an error at avid.com/license. However, it's fixable, but it does require a call to support. So brand new servers, setting them up as redundant, you're fine. If you're upgrading from standalone mode to redundant, you're going to get an error. You need to call support. We need to clean up your server host ID, and then you'll be good to activate after that. So back to my servers. All right, so far we don't have anything on there, but let's say I just went to avid.com/license like I did. I didn't go through the actual process because I already have the bin files just to save time. So I'm going to go to offline server updates. I'm going to browse to, you know what, put them on my share. Media Composer bin. Upload it. Successfully applied response to FNE server. If I go to feature usage, here's my Media Composer now. So 20 count, 20 available. I'm going to do the same thing on my primary. I actually uploaded that first one on the backup server. So if you were wondering, no, it doesn't matter which one you apply the license to first. So on the main server, browse to the same Media Composer, upload, successfully applied, feature usage. I've got my 20 seats here now as well. Same thing for Dolby. Offline server updates, browse, share, Dolby.bin. And this, I just named these so I'd know what they are. It'll come out with a portion of your MAC address and some prefix. But the key is it's a .bin file. Upload. Feature usage. Now I've got my 20 seats of Dolby AC3. I'm going to do the same thing on my other server. Features. Great. So now both servers have the appropriate licenses. One tip about .bin licenses and avid.com/license. Bin files are actually a snapshot of our license server. So you really, in this case, I actually uploaded 4 bin files. I could have got away with just uploading the Dolby because the bin file takes a snapshot of what's on our server. So if you go through and you get a Media Composer bin file, if you're going to be getting a Dolby AC3 bin file, you're basically you can just upload the Dolby one and it'll upload Media Composer as well. Same thing applies if you're uploading multiple seat packs and you have to do the alternating Media Composer Dolby AC3 activation. You can do your Media Composer, Dolby, back to Media Composer to Dolby, back to Media Composer to Dolby, and then just upload that last bin file to both servers, and it'll have all the things you previously activated there. So hopefully that helps you save some time there too. All right, so I've got my failover set up. I've got my, I should see status now. So this is my backup server. Remember I said you won't see the backup failover role indicated until you upload licenses. So we uploaded the licenses. Now the backup server says it's backup. Main server. All right, let's go activate a client. So Media Composer clients use Application Manager to activate Media Composer software. Once you have your server information saved, you really don't need Application Manager for much else if you're the end user. Once it's set up to activate, you're just launching Media Composer. When you're done using the application, you quit. License goes back to the pool. You're able to check out a license. Let's say you work at a facility, somebody needs to take a laptop into the field, or a student needs to do some homework, takes a laptop home. You can check out a license for a predetermined amount of time, and you can take that Media Composer activation off the network and use it independently. And then I'll go over a couple. Floating license server is a time-based license, so on the back end, it's really issuing, in essence, a temp license to the clients, while they're activated. So there's a couple. If you're poking around Application Manager, you might run into a couple ominous messages that your license will expire in a few hours or something like that. But it's really just on the back end how the server software works. So let me go ahead and demonstrate that. Oops, doesn't look like I've actually. Go here. All right, got Application Manager launched here. There's an apps feed here. This will tell you what you have installed. Once it's done syncing, should show some other applications that you can also install that support licensing through Application Manager. There's a feeds to show you, what's latest and greatest about Media Composer and other apps. Licensing tab. This is the most important part for you when it comes to launching Media Composer. And then there's a support tab with how to contact support, things of that nature. So back on this licensing tab, you've got a few different activation methods. There's online activation, offline activation, and floating. So here we're concerned with floating. If we click that, we've got license server option and then backup server option. Backup server is optional. So license server, you're basically putting in the host name of each server, or you can use the IP address. So in this case, host name of my main server this, backup server this. So you can save this information without actually activating your client. This is key if you're going to be deploying an image to a whole bunch of clients. So it's not tying the activation to the client's device ID. It's just saving the server information so that when the client decides to launch at some point in the future, it knows where to look for the license. There is an activate button you can activate. It's more useful for when you're checking out a license. That's something I'll go over in just a moment. So I've got this set up. I've got my license server saved. I'm going to go ahead and close this. I'm going to launch Media Composer. So it's still going to ask me first time through. My laptop, by the way, is not really qualified to run Media Composer, so it may be a little bit clunky. Still going to ask you first time through, if you save server information, it's going to ask you how you want to activate. Electronic activation is the default. You just click continue. It shouldn't show you anything else. It's just going to show you that it's activating license type. If you notice, it says floating here on the splash screen. And that's because server information saved, client's launching. QuickTime installed. I don't have it installed. So if we go back to the servers, you should see that there's now a device in the list. Oh, I've got a lab machine that also is pointing to this server that I'm demonstrating on, so it looks like somebody else is logged on from our lab. But this is me here. I can tell by the device alias. That's my host name on the computer that I'm presenting on. This is my device ID here. Backup server takes a little bit of time to sync up. So it sees the CS Mac on there from the lab. This will update shortly to show my host name of my machine as well. One thing to note, FlexNet Device Manager really isn't dynamic, so refreshing usually goes a long way if you're trying to see if something was activated or deactivated or whatnot. One more time. All right, we'll check back there later. Reservation. So once I quit Media Composer, this license should actually go back to the pool. Let's test that theory. Quitting Media Composer. Again, it's not dynamic. Refresh. The other one disappeared. I wonder if this one's showing up. It might not show up if it hasn't synced in time. So I quit out of Media Composer. It gave the license back to the pool. Checking out a license. So if you want to go ahead and take a license, bring it off campus, or leave the network for some period of time, you need to set up a reservation first. So over here in the Reservations tab, you need to add a reservation. So what I'm going to do is I have my device ID saved from the machine I'm demonstrating on. So I'm just going to go ahead, put a device ID in. Feature name, this is the name of the software that you're activating. So if you go to your feature usage tab, you can click on the software name. So you can just copy paste this. Feature name, version 8.0, count, you only need one seat, so count is 1 in this case. Click add, added reservation, pending submission. So the key here is to make sure you hit the submit button. And then I've got Media Composer reserved for this machine. Reservations are also handy. Floating license is a pool of licenses. So in like a classroom scenario, if you end up hitting that seat count threshold, you don't want to leave let's say in this case, the teacher without a license. So maybe the faculty, the instructors would all get a reservation on their machine. So they would never be without a seat, and you can always, you're never going to be left out in the cold without an activation. So reservations are handy for certain applications such as instructors, but they're required if you want to take that machine off the network and still launch your application. Reservations, they need to be set up on each server as well. So in this case, FlexNet Device Manager, reservations, I've got a reservation on this one, which is synced license-wise. It still doesn't see the reservation there. So one handy thing is you have the ability to export. Reservations.1 or reservations1.xml download is completed. So I can actually import that on my other server. Upload. There we go. So now both servers are showing the reservation. So now that I do have the reservation, what I can do, I can go back to Application Manager. If I go back to floating, now I have this checkout box that just appeared. So you can check out 1 day, 2 days, 5 days, 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month. We've gotten some requests to extend the 1 month, and we're definitely looking into that. Some educational facilities want to be able to check out a license for an entire semester, things like that. One thing to note is if you do have VPN access, you can actually access your floating license server through VPN just fine. I've tested that personally many times, and it works just fine. So I'm pretty sure that covers. Expirations explained. Let me go back to. Failover scenario. 1 moment here. Okay, I don't have anything listed now. If you actually activate here through Application Manager, this there's expires 4:42 p.m. So this is basically 5 hours in the future. This is okay. This is a back-end floating license server thing. You don't need to worry about this expiration date. If your client is still launched at the 5-hour period, it just takes the license for another 5 hours. It's okay. It doesn't mean everything's going to stop working. There's also, if I deactivate, sometimes it shows temporary expired or something along those lines. That's okay. Again, it's a time-based license, so you don't need to worry about that. That's all by design. Another thing to note is you need to sync your server and your clients via the time. Because if your server thinks it's 1 o'clock and your client thinks it's 2 o'clock, taking a license at 2 o'clock is in the future, so the client still won't be able to launch, and vice versa. If the client's behind, it's already expired according to the server. So that's one thing you want to make sure. Time sync your server and your clients. I know I'm getting short on time. I do want to demonstrate a failover as well. Let me see if I can get to that quickly. Maybe we can maybe we can start Q&A while I'm doing my disaster recovery. Just a moment.
Yeah, so I just for the disaster recovery, the failover, how much time would that take?
I'm basically just going to restart this is me tunneled into the primary server, and I'm just going to restart it.
Okay, and while IDIS is doing that, if there are any questions that you haven't submitted so far, feel free to submit those through the chat client, and we'll get started on those in just a minute. I think it'd probably be better for you to do the quick demo on the failover, and then we'll jump into the Q&A, if that's okay.
Yeah. All right, so I basically just took down my my main server. Go back to my desktop. So if I go to my main server and I refresh the page, it's not going to load anything because it doesn't exist. The machine's down at the moment. Backup server's still up. So what I'm going to do is back to Media Composer, launch it. Oh, there we go. Floating. You can see in the splash screen, I'm still launching my software. There I get my QuickTime error because I don't have it installed. And I'm launching into the software. When you bring your main server back online, as long as it's the same server and it's configured the same MAC address and everything like that, you don't need to worry about it. Media Composer will see the primary server, and it should be back up and running like it was previously. If you need to change the server, like if you had a hardware failure and it's physically a different server, there's going to be a different MAC address. So you'll need to call in support in a case like that, because we'll need to deactivate your the existing license which is on our server. So you need to call in support if you're physically replacing the hardware. And then obviously you're going to have to install FlexNet Device Manager and then configure failover on both the backup and the main servers. So pretty sure that covers the failover scenario. Just to save on time, I know we're running out of time. Once you bring up the main server, Media Composer will just switch back to the main server. All right, so to recap, we basically went through what is a floating license server. We went through the out-of-box experience. We set up our primary and backup server, went through client activation and reservations and checking out, and then we failed over to our backup server, and that brings us to questions.
All right. I just thanks so much for this content, and we are going to go into our Q&A portion of this session. We'll run this for about somewhere around 7 to 10 minutes, and then we'll wrap up so we make sure we get done on time. But a few different questions came in, Idis. One was if the floating license server software is compatible with Windows 8.
It's probably okay, but it not being on the supported list, I would shy away from it on the server side. On the client side, it's fine. We have Windows 8 qualified for Media Composer, definitely 8.2, 8.1. I don't know, I forget exactly how far back it's compatible, but yeah, client is fine with Windows 8 server. I'd shy away from it at the moment, but let me touch base with engineering, and I can definitely get back to you on that.
That sounds good. It sounds like it'll be a good question to do as a follow-up to the Q&A that we'll send out, just as a follow-up. So good question. Thanks, Lars, for that. We had Wayne, who's on the call, who asked a few different questions. One I know we answered with activating seats, but I was hoping maybe, Wayne, if we took you off mute, maybe you could ask one of your favorite questions that we maybe weren't able to answer. Jeff, are we able to take Wayne off mute?
Yeah, I think I'm off mute now. Thanks.
Yep, we can hear you. Why don't you go ahead and give us one of the questions that you wanted to ask the IDIS with the time we've got left.
Okay, well, I have clients that are on the road in foreign countries for extended periods of time during disasters in those countries that are doing fundraising for charitable organizations. They most likely in a disaster zone will not have VPN access to be able to upgrade their licenses. So for these customers, it would be recommended possibly to have their field systems permanently licensed?
You could definitely have a permanent license. I mean, you've got that 1 month time frame that you're kind of bound to right now. I mean, there's no current way to kind of send somebody like an offline, like bin file for the actual client or something like that for.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, at this point, if you have no VPN option and you're going to be out in the field for more than 30 days, yeah, I'd say at this point in time, individual license is your way to go.
Okay, thanks. And a quick follow-up, you were saying that time synchronization was critical. I understand, but how is that going to impact various time zones with clients using Sphere?
As far as the floating license aspect of it, it's time zone aware. So your machine itself is set up for a specific time zone. So if the server's in a different time zone, it's going to account for that. So that's okay. Is there something specific about Sphere, though?
No, my concern was that, because most laptops are going to be looking at the current time zone, is that going to impact? But since you're going in through Sphere, you're going to be looking at the ICS server anyway. So
I think you're okay, but I'm 99.9% sure. So let me check on the 0.01%.
I appreciate that.
All right. Okay, so we have another question that came in here. It looks like a good one to answer from Richard. Is there an option to convert existing standalone licenses to floating licenses if somebody does a conversion over to the floating license server?
Yes, definitely a conversion process in place. So right now it involves putting up a purchase order with sales. What you're doing is you're kind of listing all the systems that you want to convert. You need to fit into one of the seat packs, though. So we are bound by the seat packs. So you've got, the lowest number of seats you could convert would be 20, and it's multiples of 20 or 50 because there's, both 20 and 50 packs. So there's I believe it's on the knowledge base. There is a process where you put up a PO. Avid Sales is involved. They retire your individual seats, and then issue you the floating license server. So, and there is a cost involved. I believe it's $99 per seat for EDU, and then $4.99 per seat for commercial licenses. And those actually all come with a floating license server comes with a free year of support, just as if you that covers all the clients. That's as if you bought a standalone Media Composer. As of Media Composer 8, you've got the bundled support for a full year.
Got it. All right. It looks like we can maybe just do one more question here. So this one's a little bit more in depth, and it's from Elliot. I'm going to go ahead and read it, and hopefully we've got all that we need here. But one is, they're asking here if it's advised to set up a subnet for the server and if it is necessary to lock client IP addresses. With a little bit more information here, their licenses only activate through the server IP address, and if they had to lock the IP address of their server, but they still have problems getting all their lab comms to access the server, could this be due to limited IP addresses? And I think Elliot's off mute if Elliot wants to clarify that.
Yeah, so I was just wondering if that's, because there is a limited number of IP addresses and other students' computers are often accessing the same, internet port automatically as the server's on. So is it necessary to create a subnet to keep, all of those IP addresses reserved for only the lab computers? Does that make sense?
I don't believe you really need to worry about it because the server, you could set a static IP address for the servers, obviously, but the clients themselves, I don't know.
I mean, I think the problem we're having is that other computers are kicking off the lab computers from the network, and so finding a way to keep that network exclusive to the lab computers has been our challenge.
Okay, I wouldn't want to comment on that yet.
Sure.
That's another one I'd probably want to run past engineering. Say, hey, what's your recommendation here? I'm definitely not a networking guru, so I don't even want to venture out there at this point.
Sure. Okay.
That's another one I can follow up on. We've got that documented, so.
Thank you.
That's probably the best one for this one. And then, Elliot, for sure, check out that QA document, and if it doesn't answer your question, touch with us. We'll figure out how to get you some answers. So, all right. Well, this is wrapping up our session. Please hang on for a second because we've got a few other just quick things we want to go through. First of all, I want to thank IDIS for conducting today's Tech Talk session. And again, any questions that IDIS was not able to answer during the QA session will be sent out as a follow-up. What's going to happen is you're going to receive an email here in the next 24 hours. It's going to give you a link to this recording, and it's going to ask you to take a survey. If you link to the recording, on that link you will find the QA document, and it might take us 24 to 48 hours to get that updated out there, but it will be updated after IDIS has an opportunity to document and answer each of the questions. So another thing real quick is if you found today's session useful, we also suggest additional training options to help you be even more successful with Media Composer. For those of you who are looking to gain user certifications for Media Composer, there are 2 tiers of certifications for users and professionals, and classes are available at Avid Learning Partners at over 300 locations worldwide. For those of you looking for technical certification as an Avid Certified Support Representative, we offer a class on Media Composer Editor Technical Certification at Avid regional offices and select learning partners, and this course consists of about 5 days of intensive hands-on instruction with installation, upgrades, and troubleshooting techniques for Media Composer systems. All right, so just to kind of wrap things up here, we want to thank you for taking the time to attend today's Tech Talk webcast session. We hope you found the information valuable and useful. Please visit the Tech Talk registration page to register for additional Tech Talk sessions. New sessions will be also posted regularly, so please visit often. And finally, we just have one last request. As we plan the next webcast series, we really want to hear from our customers what topics would be most valuable to you. So like I said, in the next 24 hours, you're going to receive a follow-up email. It'll give you the recording to the webcast. It'll get you this QA. There will also be a survey on that invitation, and we really would like to ask that you take the survey, give us your feedback. On that survey, you have an option for giving us some feedback on what other topics you want to hear, and that's what we're really interested in. Your feedback on the session is important, but I also want to get the feedback on what sessions you want to hear about so we can plan our next series and get you some topics that are really of interest to you. So please take a few minutes to complete the survey, provide us with the feedback. You can also send any additional questions to customer.care@avid.com. Outside the survey, if you have topics or other ideas on how we can make these webcasts better for you. So thank you again for attending today's session, and really appreciate your time.